been watching you, watching me, and I know you want to like, subscribe, and comment. No, I'm playing, but for real, like, subscribe, and comment. Join the conversation. You don't know. Good morning, peoples. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Imuna. Early. Kawega Touch Road. Early today. This might be this one good one I get in here today. I'm trying to stay on track. So welcome to the conversation. If you are new here, my name is Imuna. Welcome to the channel. And if you're back, you don't know it already. You know what I mean? We're about to do what it is you do. And I'm venturing into some spaces that over the years, I've dealt minimally in these type of response videos or in this way that I'm about to do it today. But I felt the need today. I felt compelled today because I came across it. And what really drew my attention was the mention of the Moynihan Report on the Sister Cynthia G's channel. And so I already knew some YouTubers, you have to listen at a certain time because if not, it depends on where you are in the day. It might trigger you, voices, energy, Some YouTubers, you already know, once you click, it's going to be like, nah, I can't do this right now. Or, that's just people and energy in general. So I came across this one and I listened for a few minutes and then I was like, if I'm going to listen to this, I know that I'm going to hear some stuff that I'm going to want to say. And it's true to form. I heard some just 5 minutes in, I'm in the comment section like, bro, what are we doing? Right. So I was like, forget this. I'm just going to review one time and call it a day. I'm going to review one time and call it a day. Okay. So that's why we are here today. This video is called Why Black Men Become Submissive. What is it? Hold on. I don't even want to misquote. How Black Men Become Submissive to Zaddy, the Moynihan Report. We already know that that's going to get people in their feelings and it's going to feed a certain narrative. But what really made me want to react outside of that was is a comment that somebody named Miseducated Thing said concerning the video. Your channel is actually helping me with my graduate marriage and family therapy studies because believe it or not, there are people on YouTube who are going for their education, going for this and that third, right? And she says, I actually had to read the Moynihan Report because I specialize in researching the African-American family system. The Moynihan Report is surprisingly objective, even though it was written in the 60s by a white male Democrat politician. The report is impressively factual and unbiased. This is what the person is saying. And I'm like, wait a minute. If we're out here sourcing our information and the people that we're getting to have it from has an agenda, has a slant, that's ultimately going to make its way into academia. Even though we have to provide sources, but there are many things in academia that have slants, right? So I'm like, let's listen to it. Let's listen to it. I like academia. I like research. So let's go to the beginning of this here conversation and see if the sister was on point with what she was bringing or if there's a heavy slant on this thing. So without further ado, let me pass through this. Let me cue this thing up, play a commercial, and then I'm going to pass through, and then we're going to get started. And hopefully it don't take me too long, because today she and I have to get ready. All right. That's the Yummy Cottage. And you want to be wondering, why is Amuna back and pushing so hard? I'm looking to fund the Yummy Cottage and also just bring light to all of the work that I've already done on this side of the conversation. And, I put a lot of energy, as much as I've put into the community, into this business, and I want to see it get to the next level. So if I can lend my voice and do some reviews and some highlights in this very wild, crazy YouTube space and do two things at once, I would like to do that. So go ahead and help us get our numbers up so that we can do some real-time things in the community. I'm not just about, oh, let's talk all day. That's kind of why I came off of YouTube a lot of times, because I'm an actionable person. I do not like to talk all day. When I speak, I like to have a reason that I'm speaking, right? And it not just be vain words. So I didn't really just see YouTube as a place where I could just talk and talk and talk all day. I like actionable solutions. If we say we're unhealthy, how do we have actionable solutions? How do we push positivity in the community? How do we build businesses? I'm about those type of things. And with those things, you need monetary investment, right? You need monies to be able to invest. So if it suits your fancy, going over to the Yummy Cottage, we also have a lot of things that I've developed over there. You can check us out. It's legit. As well as if you want to just support, you can $ Cash App the Yummy Cottage on Cash App. So I'm going to read some of these comments before I jumped in. True Diamond, Wagwan. No woman in her right mind would leave a man who is providing the truth of matter is whose benefits were more than what the man could provide. Judith says, I don't like Cynthia G, but she's in her speech and her voice is kind of high pitched. I'm not going to front. Yeah, we've 95 degrees. And I agree, True Diamond. The man who wrote it did have an agenda. I was trying to go look for the video of the Moynihan Report that I went over many years ago, but there's so many of them. I was just like, I don't have that time right now. So let's jump into this, right? And see if there's a slant, if that, like Judah's saying, if that joint is wholly leaning, and if so, what can we add to the conversation, right? How can we help round this conversation off? Because when something is slanted and there's not an objective angle, like we're saying, people are taking this information and going back to their colleges and to their professors. And yeah, the title is ridiculous because I'm doing a review. So let's stay tuned and let's get into it, okay? So let me share my screen here. I'm doing a review. It's not my title. I'm just reviewing. So not clickbait. Let's get it.
Thing that black women miss the trick on is that black men already know that black women only date black men generally. So it's like I'd say it's like a 90% split. Maybe 10% might date outside, 90% only go for black men. So that means we already know your hand. So we already know, you need this, you need that, you need blah, 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 blah. But actually, you're only going to date me. So me existing, I'm already good enough. Not realistically, but I mean, as in you're only going to select from me, and there's no real way I'm going to lose you because you're not going to look anywhere else.
And that's why
Okay, so that was her playing the intro. She's springboarding off into this conversation based on somebody's podcast, talking about how even though women complain, melanated women, they're going to go for the man anyway. And so this is why I guess they're able to get away with what they do. So let's get into her commentary. This is supposed to be about the Moynihan Report, so let's listen.
We're going to get into the Moynihan Report. And the reason I'm going to read over the Moynihan Report, because this is a report that I heard black men referencing a lot as they attempted to pathologize black women.
Yeah, that word is everything. The overuse of that word is everything, but I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum.
But what black men tend to do, and we know because they're manipulative, but they're not. Black men are manipulative, but to a person who recognizes manipulation, they're not as good at manipulation as they think that they are.
People are manipulative overall. Again, this is commissary. I'm not going to pull a thing straight through. I have to stop and talk about it. One of my issues is that the overgeneralization on both sides of one, on this black so-called manosphere side is the overgeneralization of the women, and on the, I don't even know what to call the other side, women's sphere side, I suppose, it's this overgeneralization. Black men are, women are, all of those things already cause division, but let's continue. Everybody's manipulative in their own right.
So the reason black men refer to the Moynihan Report is because it speaks about welfare, and we know they always like to say welfare took them out the home, but it didn't. And in that very Moynihan Report, it talks about how the root cause of the issues in the black community at this point is, number one, it said slavery, actually. And then the second thing it said is black men's antisocial behaviors. So they skipped over that part. they skipped over the part where it said the root cause, and they went to the symptom because one of the symptoms better suited their narrative. But even that symptom, they muddied the waters and purposely misinterpreted even that part. So what we're going to do is, and I will share this with you guys. This is the Moynihan Report. Let me share this with you guys because you'll be able, and I can still see the chat box on my tablet, but I'm going to share the screen on this Moynihan Report so you guys can read along. If you look at the top of the tab here, it clearly says 1965, the Moynihan Report. So just so you guys know what I'm going over, I'm going over the Moynihan Report. So
I have to find where we read. I think it was me and Sister Mayana. I have to find where we read through this report. I know I read through this report, and I know I read through the report on air. But let me hear where she's going to pick up in this conversation. The Moynihan Report does point to slavery, but I don't think wholly it's objective in its nature, because by this point that this report is coming out, there is an epidemic. There is something going on in the community. There is a mass migration of people from the South to the North looking for jobs and opportunities. And what's happening is that an absorbent amount of women and children are being abandoned. Men are not finding what they thought they were going to find. So this is in this second migration, or this migration, there are a lot of things that's happening within the family that's leaving much to be desired, right? This is in the midst of civil rights, and the European man does not want to take responsibility for the fact that they created this dilemma, right? There's a book that precedes the Moynihan Report that is called The Negro Dilemma. It's rather expensive on Amazon. I've had it in my cart for a long time, but I've put my studies on hold. But there's a book that comes before this called The Negro Dilemma, right? And even I spoke about it years ago, notes on a Virginia plantation. Thomas Jefferson wrote about the issue that's going to happen after slavery, right? So this Moynihan Report is popping up right in the middle of the 1960s. It's seeing the issue. Civil rights is starting to heat up. There's a lot of things going on. There's poverty line. At first, the melanated woman did not classify for welfare, and welfare was something that was extended to European families. Okay, so understand that this is not a wholly objective report, but let's continue.
Well, I skipped ahead to the section because this is a really long report. So I skipped on to the point to where it said the root cause. Now, when you hear Black men talk about anything, especially issues in the community, they're talking about the symptoms, not the root cause. So I went ahead and skipped to the root cause, because
not only skip to the root cause, study the root cause. There's one thing to just go to the report. I've studied the root cause. A lot of people say, Muna, I've studied the root cause. And what we find is that people don't want to just sit down, be still, and study the root cause. Not just observe it, but get up in there, like all the way up in there. Just like I came on here the other day and shared the guy who didn't know about his family history being enslaved. And he said, the interviewer asked, well, why didn't you guys know? And he said, no one talked about it. Right. And I find that still to be true to this day. That root cause is like, nobody, don't talk about slavery. Like, don't talk about Bruno. So let's hear how much she actually knows about the root cause. Or is this a remix of what the real root cause problem is? Let's listen.
If you're going to deal with any issue, you need to go to the root cause of it. So we skipped to the part where Moynihan said the root cause. Okay, that's what we did. We skipped ahead to the root cause because that is what's mostly important. The symptoms are really not important. The root cause is. And that's what.
Okay, I'm in agreement. I've been saying this. I keep saying it. I'm in agreement. Let's get to the bottom of this now. Let's stop grasping at straws. So let's get it. Let's hear.
If you go into any doctor and you come with an affliction, they want to get to the root cause. They are interested in your symptoms only so that they can diagnose the root cause. If you go into get counseling, they're going to take you all the way back to your childhood so that they can find the root cause of your problem. They're not going to sit there and keep focusing on these little issues that you have. They're going to take it all the way back to your childhood to get to the root cause. Black men already know the root cause is them. They just like to lie. And they like to manipulate. And these are characteristics of both antisocial personality disorder and narcissism. So I'm actually saying Black men have what they call in psychology comorbid, meaning coexisting two of the.
Let's go ahead and put one pump on.
Hold on, it's a commercial playing. And while the commercial is playing, the diagnosis, we waiting on the root cause. We over here at the diagnosis. How we diagnosing and we didn't get to the root cause yet. What's really good? All right, let's go.
Have comorbid personality disorders. And it's likely more than two of them, but we know that it's these two. So we're going to read over this.
It's also a level of learned helplessness. We can't diagnose. How did we get to a diagnosis until we... okay, I'm going to... because I don't have all day. Let's go.
This Moynihan Report really quickly over some parts, because I want you guys to really listen to what this Moynihan Report is saying. All of this pertinent information that Black men just conveniently skipped over. So let's go into a quote, and then we're going to go into this part here that says reconstruction. Let me see if I can probably make this bigger so you guys, let me make this bigger so you guys can see it. Now it should be bigger, it should be easier for you guys to see it. So we're going to go into this quote, because over here they're just talking about how the system of slavery worked, and we know that they're talking about the...
No, we don't know that. We can't. If we're going to talk about the root cause, how are we going to skip over the whole part that to get to the juicy part? This is what I realized too in doing this research publicly and privately, is that people don't want to have patience. They don't want to get to the nitty gritty. They don't want to get to the parts that's not exciting and titillating. And, they want to you can't skip over assuming, when the majority of people only know what I realized. The majority of people talk about Willie Lynch, when Willie Lynch is a fictional letter that was based on something else. It was you see what I'm saying? So to assume that people understood the inner workings of slavery is the first error. But let's continue.
Sambo and things of that sort. So it says, extending this line of reasoning, psychologists point out that slavery in all of its forms sharply lowered the need for achievement in slaves. Negroes in bondage, stripped of their African heritage, were placed in a completely dependent role. All of their rewards came not from individual initiative and enterprise, but from absolute obedience. So they're already telling you that through the process of putting Black men on the plantation, and they're going to say this multiple times in this Moynihan Report, the goal here is to make Black men submissive.
Right, pause. Let me read it again. Extending this line of reasoning. We don't know what line of reasoning. I hate starting in the middle, but we're going to go ahead. Psychologists point out that slavery in all its forms sharply lowered the need for achievement in slaves. False. How did it in one sense, but not in another? If you didn't achieve, if you had a quota of how much cotton to pick, how much tobacco to pick, how much indigo to pick, if you had a quota, you needed to achieve. It didn't decrease the need for achievement, for your own gain. Right? But you did need to achieve so that you would be recognized, so that you would have value, so that you wouldn't be sold off or killed or whatever the case may be on the plantation. So you did have a level of what was expected of you. If she said, I need you to dust this whole big house and then do X, Y, Z, you needed to achieve those goals. So it was highly designed off of what we need to do to achieve. It was just that you did not enjoy the fruits of your labor. Okay, so I disagree with that first part. Negroes in bondage, and then it has a ... I don't even know if this is the whole report or if this is somebody remixing the report. Negroes in bondage, stripped of their African heritage, were placed in completely dependent roles. That is true, because in order for you to use or extract someone's labor without compensation, you had to make them wholly dependent of food, clothes, and shelter, all wholly dependent upon you. All of their rewards came not from individual initiative and enterprise, but the absolute obedience, a situation that severely depressed the need for achievement among all peoples. All of their rewards came not from individual initiative. Then how do we talk about the good field Negro? The good Negro is having the individual initiative to stand out in the eye of master so that they can be rewarded like Fiddler in Roots. So it depends on what we're talking about. Within this system, you had people who were going for self so that their enslavement wouldn't be as rough as it could be. So I disagree with that part, but let's go.
Docile and obedient. And that's basically what they are to men of no color now. So we already know that goal has been accomplished. But anyway, it says a situation that severely depresses the need for achievement among all people. Now, we know Black men have no desire to achieve. So we know.
Again. There are stories which I have read, which I have shared, that men negotiated their freedom. They wanted to achieve more. There were those who bought themselves out of slavery. Some masters did not have a plantation. Some of them rented out their slaves. Some of the contracts were so that you pay the master for your time, for renting you out, and then a little portion you can keep back. There were many people who were going to market on their day off so that they can sell. They were trying to do little entrepreneurial things. I don't know where this conversation is coming from, that no one had a desire to do better. That is wholly patently false. But let's continue.
No, they've already depressed Black men's need for achievement. He doesn't, Black men don't really care to achieve anything. It just is what it is, except getting sex from non-Black women.
Where are we going with this, though? How? So basically, are we talking about slavery or are we talking about now? You're saying that, going outside and drug dealing is trying to achieve something, but in the wrong way, okay? That's entrepreneurial spirit, but it's put in the wrong direction. I don't agree that wholly as a group of people, melanated men, have no ambition. You have those who don't have any ambition and those who do have ambition.
It says, most important matter of all, slavery vitiated family life. And vitiated means obliterated it. It changed it, it destroyed it. That's what that means. Now, I've been seeing this word before, but you can look at context clues to find out what vitiated means. And I guess
let's just look it up. I'm the type of person, yeah, we could do that too, but we could look it up since we stopped at that word, right? It really took like 2 more seconds to look it up. So I'm gonna look it up real quick so that we make sure that we are not moving on with this conversation. And hold on. Context clues are great, but we're on the computer, so we can just look it up. To make faulty or defective. Impair the comic impact is vitiated by, hold on, let me click this. This is Merriam-Webster. Hold on a second. To make faulty or defective. To debase in moral or aesthetic status. To make ineffective. Okay?
To you, if I look up the definition of vitiated, it's going to tell you what I said that it was.
If you've been considering homeschooling or feel your child is not thriving in public school, consider the Zaddy Institute.
So some of the things, it's like some people get tripped up by definitions all the time. So it don't really take nothing off of us to just read the definition for what it is so that we can just not just make up what we want it to be. I had this conversation just the other day. I said the moon and the sun shines all in their own right. And then someone came through and said the moon doesn't shine. So I went and looked up that definition and told them, pick which one of these you tell me the moon does. Right?
Since many slave owners neither fostered Christian marriages among their slave couples nor hesitated to separate them on the auction block, the slave household often developed a fatherless, matrifocal, mother-centered pattern. So what you see right now with the woman-headed houses, this was a dynamic of slavery, not feminism. What do they say broke up the home? Feminism broke up the home. Feminism, then we take welfare, that broke up the home.
Okay, that's the parts that I'd be like, oh, chill. That might be hitting. But that part is true, that it became a female focus. I think we actually had the conversation here that talks about, even before this point, how they got to where it became matrifocal, matrilineal, right? And matriarchal. And we talked about the laws that were passed early on, that the status of the child would follow the mother, right? Initially in the country, they had British law, okay? where the status of the child would father the father. The father was responsible for rearing the child. The father was responsible for taking care of the child and making sure the child was educated, X, Y, and Z. Now, when the enslavement system came here to the West, they adopted a Roman system. I went over this. There's a video on it. Let me get the name of the video in a minute. But the Roman system came in where the status of the child would follow the mother. That would mean now the mother or the woman or the female was more important. Early on in slavery in the West, the male was more important. They just used the male's energy and strength. That's when the slave trade was bust wide open, and they would just import males. And when the male died, they just imported more males. The male to female ratio, the male ratio was greater. But then when things started slowing down and they were like, oh, chill, we're going to need to just do this thing in house. They changed certain laws so that they would have a self-fulfilling system where the woman would breed more slaves. Because if the men were free, the child would be free. In their new system, the woman is enslaved, the child is enslaved. So this is what even opened the door to the European man in impregnating the woman without no consequence. Because why? The status of the child would follow the enslaved mother. So that is where on these plantations, these masters would hold dearly the woman, because they know if any child that comes from this union, I'm going to have some new slaves. So for them, it increased the profit margin. And so we have these places where it didn't benefit to get the women married, because you were going to not only lose the women, if she goes to the other man's plantation, you're also going to lose those children that come from the women. So the men in value in the slave system, they were valuable for labor, but not valuable for reproduction. Okay, but let's continue.
No. The matriarchy was already established on that plantation. It was established, and they're going to say that again. So it says the Reconstruction. With the emancipation of slaves, the Negro American family began to form in the United States on a widespread scale, but it did so in an atmosphere markedly different from that which has produced the white American family.
I like how we said get to the root and then we skipped over the root. Like we did the long jump, the triple jump over the root. That's not enough root. like you brush a little dirt off, like, whew, that's not enough root. That didn't tell us what we needed to know. That didn't tell us a lot of anything, really, because to really understand what was going on in that time is to understand what's going on in this time. But oftentimes that's not the objective, because we the people don't know enough in that area. But let's continue.
The Negro was given liberty, but not equality. This is why I tell you guys, that the civil rights movement was trying to seek equality. It wasn't. Those are two separate things. Liberation is one thing, equality is another thing, assimilation is another thing, and integration is another thing. They are not to be confused. If Black men are seeking integration, that is something completely different from equality. It is not my fault that they don't know the definition to the words that they use. So I'll say it again. Black men never sought equality. They sought integration. It's not the same thing. But anyway, life.
I'm gonna just let's keep going. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get through this whole video. I think it was at the 20-something mark, and I kind of don't want to take it out of context. So I'm gonna just let some of this stuff go so that I can kind of stay on a linear thought. Let's go.
Remained hazardous and marginal. Of the greatest importance, the Negro male, particularly in the South, became an object of intense hostility, an attitude unquestionably based in some measure of fear. Now, we will put emphasis on some measure of fear, because you have to speculate as to what was the measure of fear. Did they fear that Black men were going to beat them up? No. They ain't fearing that, because they already told you that putting him on the plantation made him obedient.
What do you mean they wasn't fearing that? Father, give me the strength to overcome. Sis, with all due respect, this is historically incorrect. The ultimate fear was the fear of retaliation. It was a real and present fear. If you look at the story of Nat Turner, it was a real and present fear. If you look at the story of the rebellions, I have a book. Me no want to dig up my book them, you know. That's why I almost didn't want to touch this topic. You have a book that goes into all of the rebellions. I think I pulled it out the last time. What do you mean they did not fear the melanated man? Of course they did, in every capacity. And this is why you see the level of, like somebody would say, the level of what's the word I'm looking for here? Hold on, let me get this book. Just one of the books. The way in which the punishment was for the things, for reading, for running away, for talking back, the brutality of the punishment, the high level of vitriol that was returned, the propaganda, all of this came from fear. What do you mean they didn't fear? What are we saying? That's not true. Because we have an agenda that we want to push. You know how many people perished? You know how many people lost their lives? To say that they didn't fight is not true. And that's disrespect. If you want to make a point, that's cool. But if you want to lie on your ancestors and those who came before you to make the point, that's not cool. Hold on, please. I'm going to have to pull the book. It's a book that talks about resistance. The resistance, and my daughter moved my stuff around. This talks about the resistance, right? There's nothing but rebellion and resistance. I have a number of books that talked about the way in which people resisted and rebelled, all in their right. And to say that the powers that be, the people who were oppressing were not afraid of the melanated man, it is not true. That is a falsehood. That's a falsehood.
And submissive. So that's not the fear that they have. When Jim Crow made its appearance towards the end of the 19th century, it may be speculated that it was the Negro male who was the most humiliated thereby. The male was more likely to use public facilities, which rapidly became segregated once the progress began, and just as important, segregation and the submissiveness it exacts. So this is why you keep seeing the theme of submissive, obedient, docile, because this.
Who is writing the report? What demographic of people is this person writing? The victor writes the Ragil history. So if you go and you take the Moynihan as gospel, you're going to be in error, because the reality is the rebellions that were happening, the fear that was struck in the hearts of men, women, and child. This is why people were hunted in the way in which they do, because they were afraid. I'm gonna look for my book while this plays.
This is the goal for Black men. They were wanting to make him submissive and docile. It's surely more destructive to the male than the female. Keeping the Negro in his place can be translated as keeping the Negro male in his place. The female was not a threat to anyone. Okay? Now, this is a report that Black men use.
The female was not a threat. What y'all said to me? Yeah, Father, give us this strength. The female was not a threat? Let me keep going. I got something to do today, y'all. It's 10:25.
To prove that welfare and feminism broke up the Black family. But you see here, it's telling you the goal was to keep the Negro in his place. They're saying, when they say this, they're being very specific to Black men. These reports and telling you that the male became more submissive than the female. That is what happened. Oh, no. The woman ain't a threat to nobody. They're telling you the woman's not a threat to anybody. They wanted to keep that Negro male in his place. They wanted to make.
Why did you need to keep the male in his place if you weren't afraid of him? Earlier, just a few seconds ago, you said no one was afraid of the melanated male. Now, 2 seconds later, the report is saying, and you're in agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, that They needed to make the man submissive. You don't need to make somebody submit that's not a threat, or that you don't want to lord over, or that you don't want to govern over. Why do you need to make him submit if he was already submitted? That doesn't make sense. If you're not afraid of him, then what's all of this about?
Him submissive and him more obedient, and they said it's surely more destructive. The submissive position that they put the Black community in was more destructive to the Black male than the female. It just is what it is. They knew what they were doing because they knew psychology. Hey, Nyla.
Hey, Cindy, how are you? You cooking, girl?
Oh, good. So basically what I was saying is that when they're talking about slavery and Jim Crow, and what the tone of submissiveness and obedience did. And they're saying that the process of segregation and the submissiveness that it exacts is surely more destructive to the male than the female personality. Keeping the Negro in his place can be translated as keeping the Negro male in his place. The female was not a threat to anyone. So when they're sitting here telling...
Who is saying this? You're taking exactly what Moynihan is saying and acting as though it's gospel. Both the male and the female were a threat. This is why all of the mind games, all of the psychology, all of the abuse, everything was done because these two, if you're going to abuse somebody, take somebody's children, rob, murder, do all the pillage, all of these things, you would be afraid, very afraid. All of this is done because the people were afraid, very afraid of the retribution. And they wrote it down. I don't want to have to dig up the stuff, but I'm going to have to dig up the stuff. They put it on paper. Let me pause right quick. I'm going to show you how thick this next book is. Let me stop sharing this screen right here. Let me look up a book for you guys. 1 second. Hold on. Let's look up. Wait, let me get it real quick. I've had this book. It's only because I'm over here busy doing yummy cottage stuff. This stuff is just too much. It's more than the Moynihan Report. Let me pull up and share here. This is the danger when we already come to the conversation with an agenda. All right, this book right here, I've showed you guys before. The Moynihan it didn't just come out of nowhere. This book, An American Dilemma, The Negro Problem and Modern Democracy, Volume 1, Black American Studies, right? The hardcover is $170. The paperback you can get for $40-something, right? This book, let's see when it was published. Hold on. This book was published, the original, it's 812 pages long. This is why it's been in my cart forever in 2 days. It's 800, it's a textbook, fam. Okay? This predates the Moynihan Report. Okay, this has been an issue that has been examined even before slavery was done. Like I said, Thomas Jefferson speaks about this issue, that it's going to be an issue. This is why they started the colonization project, and they were trying to get melanated people to go to Liberia. So why? Because they already knew that the damage that was done was going to be a problem once these people woke up, and so that they needed to do everything possible, throw everything at these people so that they wouldn't rise up and exact retribution for all of the things that were done to them. In this landmark effort to understand, quote, African-American people in the New World, Gunnar Myrdal provides deep insight into the contradictions of American democracy, as well as a study of a people within a people. I've said this a million times. You cannot have the conversation without acknowledging that this is a people within a people. You cannot have a nation within a nation. Okay? You cannot have a sovereign nation within a nation. Just look at the American Indians. There's not the person who's the dominant people in society, the one who makes the laws are in this place, are not going to allow a sovereign nation within a nation. The title of the book, An American Dilemma, refers to the moral contradiction of a nation torn between allegiance to its highest ideals and awareness of the base realities of racial discrimination. And it goes on. Okay, so this book, if anybody wants to take a look at it, is what predates the Moynihan Report. The Moynihan Report just glosses over now the issue as it has become exacerbated. I think this book was written in like the 20s. Let me check real quick. I don't want to mislead you. See, yesterday I was over here laughing at Umar and his stuff, but now I had to like switch gears real quick. This book was written in, hold on. No, this book was a 1944 study. So it comes 20 years before the Moynihan Report. But let me continue for the sake of time. For the sake of time. Hold on. Let me know if you guys still there, if you can still hear me. I'm like, I had to switch gears. It's like, oh, Amuna's turned up this morning. But I'm like, come on, man, sis. Come on, sis.
That it starts with the woman, and if the woman wasn't doing this, the black men wouldn't be where they're at. No, they're telling you this is about the male. The females, they're not a threat. The males, their goal is to make the males docile, and they accomplish that goal. What do you think about that part, Nayla?
I'm loving this. You are cooking, and I'm loving that you're using.
Hold on, there's a commercial that's going through. The objective is to make sure that the masculine, which is who's gonna wholly be able to fight, to be able to govern, to be able to do those things. Yeah, the goal is to make sure that this masculine energy does not rise up and take over. Like, we have to understand, oftentimes it's either you're going to subdue the male, or you're going to make sure that you're going to annihilate the male. And because they have not been wholly successful at doing both, they've moved towards the annihilation of the male. And this is what we're seeing even in today's space and time, so that every time one rises up, there's prevention of this so-called Black Messiah to prevent anybody from rising up. It's a real thing. All of this stuff is on record. Yeah, because why? The fear of having a nation within a nation is real. There's no way where that the melanated community or people have been able to go to establish themselves anew. It hasn't happened. And so this is a rare case. You cannot look around the world that I know of and say, like such and such. This is a rare case, because in order to be a nation, you have to have a language, a people, a culture, and you have to have land. Land is connected to sovereignty. And I'm not just talking about the family farm. So if you don't have the right to govern your own culture, your own land, and all of those things, you're going to be a nation within a nation. And ultimately, the people who are ruling are going to continue to try to do everything that they can within their power to make themselves rule. Yeah. So to wholly blame the person who was captured and subdued, I don't know.
And have weaponized this report against Black women without having the intellectual aptitude to actually break it down and see where it applies to them. And there are many parts of this report that they should really focus in on and hone in on, and Black women as well, that have just been overlooked. I'm so glad you're doing this.
Yeah, so it says, unquestionably, these events worked against the emergence of a strong father figure. Now, this is in the 19th century. So they're telling you in the 19th century, they had already damaged the emergence of a strong father figure. They had already done that because they made him submissive. They made him obedient to white supremacy. They humiliated him. They made him the object of their violence. The woman wasn't a threat. The man is. So therefore, everything is going to go towards him for the most part. And then it says the very essence of the male animal, from the bantam rooster to the 4-star general, is to strut. Indeed, in the 19th century, and that essentially means the very essence of the male animal is basically to flex. It's for him to be confident. It's for him to show who he is as a man. Indeed, in the 19th century America, a particular type of exaggerated male boastfulness became almost a national style, not for the Negro male. The sassy Negro was lynched. So those dudes, the reason you saw them in suits, Those were the ones they considered the sassy Negroes, the ones who wanted to strut in a system of white supremacy. In this situation,
the educated lames and the high value black men, basically.
Yeah.
See, oh Father, give us this strength. I'm confused, bro. Yo, and sis says she's studying the channel for her master's, brethren. If you're not educated, right, in this system, if we talk about at the time that they were lynched, that's not the only reasons they were lynched. They were lynched for a myriad of reasons. They were lynched for a myriad of reasons, okay? So the fact that we just ran and triple jumped over from slavery to emancipation to Reconstruction, we triple jumped, like bop, 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 just triple jumped over the whole thing and rolled on into Black Code, Jim Crow. It does not make for a healthy discussion, because to conclude that it was just an educated lames that were getting lynched because Moynihan says so is absurd. What was educating yourself in this system was an act of defiance. Simply educating yourself. It was an act of rebellion. See, rebellion in this slavery construct wasn't just, oh, I'm gonna fight you with pitchforks or do the Nat Turner and burn down your farms, or it wasn't just that. It was going against that which was not open for the melanated person in the West. So again, I don't think there's value in just coming and overlaying your predisposition onto this story. It's robbing people who are honestly coming to these conversations for enlightenment. Although the people who come to the conversations for enlightenment should really be doing their own research. I guess that's the only thing we can walk away with from this. Do your own research, man.
We're talking about Kevin Samuels and all of these men. That's what they're talking about. Men who are basically dominated, men who are willfully subjugated, because there are no whips and chains anymore. This is willful subjugation, willful participation in being submissive to another man.
And then it says,
again, you're looking for a people who have been subjugated, to use your words, and looking for somebody. I really want to ask, what do you want? Do you want a nation within a nation, a sovereign nation within a sovereign nation? Because all of the perspective that I hear that you're coming from is that the goal that you're looking towards is unrealistic. It's unrealistic. You cannot have a sovereign nation inside of a nation. It don't work. So the melanated male, given that he doesn't have his own land, culture, language, and government, what you are asking for, he's existing within someone else's construct. So basically what I'm saying is the melanated male and female is in survival mode. Why? Because they're existing within someone else's construct. And anywhere you saw slavery or enslavement across the globe, across time and space, you're going to see something similar. This is not just something that's dealing with the white man. If you go to Roman times and how they deal with their slaves and how they incorporate their slaves into society, if you go to Egypt, if you go across the continent, if you go to wherever someone has taken someone else and enslaved them, you're going to see some similar attributes. So to say that this is wholly something dealing with the so-called black men, I think it's not intellect. Since we're dealing with intellect, it's not intellectually honest. My thoughts.
In this situation, the Negro family made but little progress towards the middle class pattern of the present time. Margaret Mead has pointed out that while in every known human society, and I want you guys to pay attention to this so you can understand the abnormal.
And by the way, for those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. I only heard a little bit, and I'm just reacting now based on what I'm hearing. So I'm reacting with you guys. Okay.
Normal position that black men are playing in terms of a man. It says in every known human society everywhere in the world, the young males learn that when he grows up, one of the things which he must do in order to be a full member of society and considered a man is to provide food for some female and her young. Basically to provide for a family. So they're saying all over the world, the young boys are raised to know that in order to be seen as having any merit in society or as a man, you need to provide for a female and her young. You need.
I would say if we say male, that includes the animal kingdom. Now, if these males are within an unnatural environment, then that natural instinct is going to be clouded. If you have a male lion growing up in the zoo and food is provided for that lion and that lioness, the natural instinct to go out there and provide food is not going to necessarily be there because somebody is providing said food. So in this conversation, if we have already seen that the natural inclination of the male and female has been tampered with, then it stands to reason. This is the reason why that obvious thought is not activated, because someone has been providing food, someone has been providing clothing, someone has been providing shelter, and because that keeps the person in a perpetual infantile mind state, a dependent mind state, which the article stated early on. So you can't say one thing and then say the other thing and then say, why is it not like this, when you just told us why it wasn't like this, because of the state of the people overall. But let's continue.
To have a family. So when black men are running around as the only group of men on the planet talking about how they're not going to provide for or protect the women, understand that this is an abnormal pathology. Hey, ladies.
It's not the only group. What's the name of the people in China? There's a specific tribe in China that's matriarchal, and them dudes be on gondolas all day. Them dudes do not go out and provide spit. The woman is over there working. The dude is going. The thing, I gotta go back and look at the name of that culture in China. There are certain situations, there are certain times when something or some thought interrupts the natural inclination, and then the man, the role of the man and the woman becomes reversed. You know what I mean? So if anybody remembers the name of that group in China, let me know, because it's not everybody all over the world. In some places, the roles are reversed because of whatever the people came up with. But hold on, it's on a commercial, so I'm gonna let that play, and then I don't want to get off track. Come on. Hold on 1 second, peoples. Okay, here we go. For those who've just joined us, I'm just doing a little review. There's some things that I came across that I, in listening quickly this morning, that I was like, all right, this is worth doing a review. So hold on 1 second.
It's not normal. You even see it among animals. It's
another commercial again. You do see it among animals, but it depends. It really, really depends. And if you look at the penguins, because I watch a lot of everything, right? Because I just like learning. If you look at the penguins, even the role of the penguin, in Antarctica, you will have, first of all, they're monogamous. When they mate, one is responsible for sitting on the egg, because if the egg touches the ice, then the egg is going to die. And then the female goes for this long journey while the male sits there and sits on the egg. And she goes for this long journey to the ocean to get food, She eats, she come back, or either one comes back, and then they're looking throughout the crowd for that particular mate. Then they switch eggs. One puts the egg on their foot, and then they sit on the egg, and then the other person goes for the journey. So when you talk about it even happens in the animal kingdom, it depends on the nature of that specific animal. Each animal within the animal kingdom, they have different culture. Every animal within the animal kingdom does not have the same culture. You have the female lioness. She goes out and gets the food. The man doesn't go out. The male doesn't go out and get the food oftentimes. She goes out and gets the food. And then when she gets the food, dude is waiting and to attack, especially if she has young, so that he can go scare off everybody and eat the food. So no, all across the animal kingdom, you don't have the same culture. It really depends on the animals and their nature. Well, let's continue.
The one thing that we know across males and all species except the lions, because the lions go out, the females go out and hunt for the food. But
same thing. I just told you I didn't even watch this part, so I'm glad she caught that. I didn't even watch this part. We're watching it together. I'm glad she caught that because
every other situation, the males know that they got to provide for a family.
Nah, not every. It's still not every other situation, and it's not every. It's many other situations. And many other situations.
Black men do not. Black men are the single group of men on the face of the planet who thinks that it's a simp who takes care of his family. He doesn't look at himself as a degenerate and a derelict because he doesn't. He doesn't see himself as abnormal because delusion is in those trash bags. And one of the
I know many melanated men who take care of their family. Many. And then there are many that don't. So again, these generalizations is not good. I don't know what the end game of this conversation is, but it's not unity. You're going to divide the wheat from the tares, right? Everybody is not wheat and everybody is not tares. There are many men who want to take care of their family and they're being stopped from taking care of their family. There are many who just don't. There's all these different type of scenarios and situations. And it's not just, it's unjust to just pretend as though, Black men in general don't take care of their family. There are those who do, and then there are those who don't.
Those trash bags is delusion. And so a part of that delusion tells him that he's normal when he's not. He's abnormal because he doesn't have a desire to provide for and protect. It says within the family, each new generation of young males learn the appropriate nurturing behavior and superimpose upon their biological given maleness this learned parental role. When the family breaks down, as it does under slavery, mind you, they're not saying as it does under feminism. They're not saying as it does under welfare. They're not saying it does under Black women choosing to align themselves with men of no color. They're saying as it does under slavery, i.e. they took Black men and put him on a plantation because he was docile and refused to fight back. They're saying the family breakdown is because of slavery. And there's a part here that
I think that's the part I heard. He was docile and refused to fight back. Come on, man. More so than just being out here trying to get clicks and YouTube views and build. This is wrong. This is wrong. Your ancestors died, bled, sweat, cried. Prayed. This is wrong. It's historically wrong. It's spiritually wrong. It's emotion. This is the part that I was like, bruh, refuse to fight back. What are we saying here? What are we saying? What are we saying? I think this, like I said, one of the reasons why I had to ease off of, because it takes me in a whole different mind frame, right? I was getting real heavy when I was just hitting the books, because all of that energy, all of that experience, I was I had to ease up a little bit. You feel me? But to say that they did not fight back is wrong. It's not historically accurate. There was a fight from ocean to ocean. There are those who did, and there were those who didn't. And those who didn't, oftentimes, they lived. And those who didn't live to tell. You had a fight on the continent. You had a fight on the boat. You had a fight when they got to the islands in South America. One of the things that we have to realize is that by the time the melanated body got to America, firstly, it was the least amount of melanated bodies who came to America. That's number one. America got the least amount of so-called Black slaves. Secondly, those who came to America were already programmed to be the more docile ones. Because the places that the European were getting in bodies from, it wasn't just one place. Different tribes were known to have different temperaments. Different tribes, some were warriors, some were craftsmen. They had different temperaments, okay? And America was the last, which would have been under the English, were the last to jump on this whole slave trade conversation. The Portuguese and the Spanish were out here doing it for 200 years before it got on and popping in the American colonies. Okay. And when Britain finally was like, yo, give me some of that. I want some of that. Let me get in there. Okay. They came in and they already had all of these experience to go off of. So by the time people were coming from Barbados, by the time they were taking them to Haiti, which is where they were first taking slaves, by the time they were going to Brazil, which is where the majority of the slaves went, by the time they were going to Cuba and Jamaica, they already say, okay, these troublesome slaves is a problem. Okay, we're going to bring some to the mainland, but we don't want to bring these trouble ones. We don't want to bring these troublemakers. We're going to season them. Seasoning a slave meaning to kind of wash the rebellion out of you, beat the rebellion out of you, beat you and put pepper in your wounds and put salt in your wounds. To say they didn't rebel is a spit in the face of your ancestors only because you want to prove some type of made up theory. Come on, read the books. If we're going to be out here talking about this, read the books, read their stories, read the narratives. Like, this is a part where I don't take lightly, because if we don't correct the sins of our ancestors, we can never move forward. This is a mute conversation if we don't look back and look at the things that got us to this point. All of this talking is in vain. It's all vanity if we don't really understand. And to say that they didn't rebel is wrong. There was points in time, and I've said this before, where the black sailors, the melanated sailors, were banned. Hear what I say to you. Banned from getting off the ships when it ported in America. Why? Because the European slave masters in America did not want them to transmit information that would cause a rebellion. So there came a point in time, and I've done this on this channel, where they were like, you don't even get to come off the ship. Because when information was coming from the Caribbean and it was coming from South America, that rebellion was happening. Hold on there. Let me run a commercial real quick so I could calm down for 2 seconds. I might have to just come on and make it a whole different show. As a matter of fact, I never want to play no commercial right now. Because right now, I'm going to get vexed. Right now, I'm getting vexed, yo. How you... Yo, just say you don't know if they rebelled. Just say you don't know if they fought back. Just say that. Better you say that. But to say they didn't and you don't know, that's off. That's off. That's absolutely off. Let me, what time is it, yo? 1:07. I gotta go get ready. Let me breathe. Let me drink some water or something, man.
But they're going to say that from the emancipation of slavery, once you walked off that plantation, there was already the dynamic of women-headed household has already been established. It had already been established the minute they got emancipated from slavery. That's when it got established, and that's why Black men are okay and comfortable with it. Under certain forms of indentured labor and serfdom.
It was already established, as you said earlier. It wasn't off the plantation. It was already established on the plantation, right? And if we talk about epigenetics, if we talk about programming, if we talk about generational trauma, then this was already a thing. Abroad marriages, and I've spoke about this before as well. Abroad marriages where the man was on a different plantation and he had to go and visit his wife and children, that was already part of the culture. Because if she lived, oftentimes, let me rewind. If we want to talk about what was established on the plantation, depending on your slave master, you had religious slave masters. And it depended on what kind of religious slave master you was. Was they Catholic? Was they Baptist? Was they Methodist? Was they atheist? It depends on what type of slave master you had. That's going to determine how they dealt with their slaves, number one, or the enslaved. Number two, if the master did not want, if he was okay with the woman reproducing, but not okay with the man being there, then what would happen was that the man would either get permission or not, and he would have to get these passes. And oftentimes he didn't want the woman that was on his plantation for many reasons. A, she's right there, so he doesn't really get a pass on the weekend so that he can go and see go onto another plantation, and B, anything that happened, because he was disempowered, anything that happened with his woman and his children, he didn't have any say over, and he didn't want to see that oftentimes in his eyesight. So he would often go for a woman on another plantation because there were benefits to doing that. They called those abroad marriages. There were other marriage types when the master just wanted you to breed, and he would take the buck from another plantation or from his plantation and forcibly match up the man and the woman. And if they weren't producing children after a while, or if whatever was happening, he would do this serial monogamous type thing where he would force the man or the woman to get with someone else. So even if they loved the person, this forcible disconnection from the person you may have loved or from the person you didn't like was also within the fiber way before emancipation. So there are all these different dynamics, or you would have had the master who wanted healthy relationships, quote unquote, as much as it could have been in that time, and allowed for this family life to exist. You can't just broad brush it because there are different scenarios on different plantations, because even the aristocrat, the master, the planter society wasn't a monolith. They all had their different ways in which they, quote, dealt with their business. Let's continue.
In periods of extreme social unrest during wars, revolutions, famines, and epidemics, or in periods of abrupt transition from one type of economy to another, this delicate line of transmission is broken. Men may founder badly in these periods, during which the primary unit may become mother and child, the biologically given and the special conditions under which man has held his social traditions in trust are violated and distorted. So they're already telling you the process by which they demand Black men, and Black men think that this report is in favor of them just because they mention Black women being on welfare. This is how delusional they are. E. Franklin Frazier makes clear that at the time of emancipation, Negro women were already accustomed to playing the dominant role in family and marriage relations, and that this role persisted in the decades of the rural life that followed. Should we read?
Again, this is a lot of different topics. Anytime you have a topic like this, I've found in times past, if you mash it all together, you're gonna miss some really good points because it's jumping everywhere. It's everywhere. Okay, so I can agree that the family unit was already damaged during the process of enslavement. Okay. The conclusion, though, this Moynihan conclusion, is to try to absorb the planter class, the system that did it, absorb them and put it kind of on the Negro woman and the Negro man. If you read the report in its entirety, it mentions slavery, but it kind of like wants to shift the blame and the responsibility, because if you look at some of the reports, and Hezekiah's in news, shout out to him. He has a lot of reports on his channel, and we went over some of those. It starts to look, they started doing a lot of reports during this time about the welfare and Black people and single motherhood, and they wanted a reason. Why is it thus? Right? What's the compensation? What's going on? And so they were looking to pinpoint where this information, where this problem was coming from, so to say. And so, like I said before, the report is not wholly objective, because the people who are really responsible for breaking the system are not held accountable.
Read that one over again. Negro women at the time of emancipation, that means the minute that you got off of slavery, since you got off of slavery, the women were already accustomed to playing the dominant role in the family and marriage relations. So this dynamic did not come from feminism. It did not come from welfare. It didn't come from it. No, it came from slavery. It came from slavery. I'll read it again. It says, E. Franklin Frazier.
Like I said, I would agree. This dynamic came from slavery because oftentimes the women in the family were already there. They were already in one space. They were already on one plantation. And the father could have been there. He could have not. He could have been on another plantation how many miles away, right? And so therefore he's not there for the everyday workings. Or he could have been on that plantation And he could have been taken and given to another family. There's so many different dynamics that this broad brush right here, it doesn't help, I don't think, understanding what happened. And for those who were separated after emancipation, there was this whole time where the Freedmen's Bureau is incorporated, and what happened was a lot of people who were separated and people were sold. Remember, there's this second mass migration that was tearing families apart by the time of 1865, and sending a lot of people down into the cotton region, because at this time cotton became king. The cotton gin is giving this new reemergence of the need for melanated bodies deeper down south. So one of the threats would have been, I'm gonna sell you down south to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, all of these places. So that would have, again, separated families and left the woman to be responsible for the children, right? So there are many dynamics that played into why, by the time slavery had ended, the woman was the one that was holding the bag.
Makes clear that at the time of emancipation, Negro women were already accustomed to playing the dominant role in the family and marriage relations, and that this role persisted in the decades of rural life that followed. Translation: by the time Negro women stepped off that plantation, Black men were already expendable. Black men were already expendable by the time.
All right, you let me know if you guys are there. You guys are quite quiet today. Oh, let me turn down. You guys are quiet today. I don't want to overwhelm the people, but I just wanted to. There's a few more things I want to talk about, so let me just do that.
Said that one of the reasons why they were expendable right off the plantation is because they weren't actively doing anything for themselves, that they had to be free.
Yeah.
Wasn't just because we know that like all of this was in the power of the dominant culture. They had to be free. They were, and the only reason why they were freed is because it benefited white society at large to do so. It was an economic thing. It wasn't a moral thing. It wasn't because they became a nuisance under captivity or whatever they want to call it, under their oppression. They didn't become so hard to enslave that they decided that it's better to free them. What it was is these guys are better for us financially. We can cripple the Southern economy. We can be the superpower and use this in order to capitalize off of them financially. It had nothing to do with anything. Their rebellion didn't free them. Their Jesus didn't free them. Their fighting didn't free them. Nobody, none of that. The white man freed them.
Pause. Father, give us the strength to overcome. Look, this thought to rewrite history so that we can prop up our thoughts and subjugate one another is a waste of time. Out of slavery, the craftsmen, the artisans, the people who knew how to run the whole system was the melanated man and woman. All of the know-how, it's just like today in this country. If the people, the know-how, the people who know how to do things, stop doing those things, there is no more economy. Okay? So this thought that he had no value coming out of slavery is wrong. You want to know how it's wrong? Because the time from emancipation to Reconstruction, when you see that there was a shift, when you see that when you open the door, how far and fast he excelled during that time, the people excelled. You know who had the power. They were just being oppressed. And once you took, it was like in a pressure cooker. They knew how to do things, how to build things, how to construct things. What are we talking about? What do you think our ancestors were, though? What? I mean, brethren, the freeing of the slaves was economic. But let's rewind a little bit. This is going to take long, y'all. I don't want it to take long. Let's rewind. In the early 1800s, I think it was like 1805. Now you're going to make me have to go into my memory. I know I'll be forgetting stuff, except for what started happening was that there were abolitionists who were emerging, who were like, yo, this whole slavery thing, it's not a good look. And I think y'all should stop. Early on, the Quakers were telling the European that this is going to be a bad look. I don't think y'all should do it. But they continued anyway. And eventually, in I think 1804 or 5, I'm gonna give y'all right now. 1804. It stopped. What was happening was they're seeing what's happening in France, between France and Haiti. Right, this 1804 is the Haitian Revolution. We think that things were happening in a vacuum. It's absolutely wrong. To say that it was nothing of what the melanated people were doing as a collective that stopped slavery is incorrect. It's absolutely incorrect. People talk, people travel, people see what's going on. So when people saw that it was advantageous to come to the West because slavery was profitable, they came. And when they saw it was no longer advantageous because of the rebellions and all the things that were happening, they started to reconsider their position. Okay? So in 1804, Haiti is like, yo, brethren, burn this thing down. And the reason why Haiti is doing that is because a lot of the unmanageable slaves were in places like Haiti, in places like Jamaica. This is where they dropped them off at. So when they're seeing this and they're seeing like France, and they're like, we cannot have a free Black country in the West. It's not going to work. France come and say, oh, Haiti, you owe me reparations for destroying blah, blah, blah. When we see the Maroons in Jamaica, and the British is like, yo, the Maroons is like, yo, this is not going down. The British have to make a treaty and say that this is not going to work. And America knows that ultimately rebellion is coming to the lands of America. And if they keep burning down plantations, if they keep damaging the crops, it's no longer going to be financially expedient to continue in this realm. In addition to that, you have people from a religious moral standpoint that was saying slavery is wrong, you need to stop. So in the early 1800s, they were petitioning in England to say, hey, we need to stop the importation of slaves in the United States or to the West, period. You cannot no longer bring them. Let me get the date on that. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to tell you the date. So to say, first of all, this is early 1800s. Emancipation of slaves don't come to 1865. This thing has been brewing. Here we go, 1807. The Act Prohibiting Importation of Slaves, 1807. Okay? So it's not one thing that just happens and boom, 1865. This thing has been brewing. This thing has been growing. All of these factors are in the pot to where eventually America's like, because remember, it's called the transatlantic slave trade, the triangular slave trade. Therefore, you have different points on this map. And if at any point, just like what we're experiencing right now with inflation and prices, if at any point it is no longer advantageous, people start to reconsider. So if you're getting bodies from the continent, okay, and then you're going to bring them to the Americas to get raw materials that you're going to bring back to Europe to refine, that you're going to take back to the continent to get more. And somebody along this way, he says, you can't get no more bodies from the continent. Somebody going to be like, oh, chill, we can't get no more bodies. This is about to be a problem. So there became a crink in the system, so much so that the people on the continent who were getting dirty, filthy, fat, rich, the tribes and the leaders, and I got books on that too, they were like, man, we don't like this. What are y'all doing? What you mean you don't want no more bodies? So this thought that was just said, let me rewind the thought, that this is a narrow view of history and an inaccurate retelling of what actually happened and why it was happening. It was a collective of things that were happening that led to, you know what, economically, this is no longer expedient. Also, what was happening in America is that the South was getting dirty, filthy, stinking rich. The North had the industry, the South had the raw production. Okay. The North was building the things for the boats. They were building shipyards. They were making rope and twine. The North was making bottles. They had factories up there that was carrying the rum that they were getting from the Caribbean and the South to do sugarcane production. And it was all a whole thing. Everybody was getting dirty rich. Bristol, when you look at England and Europe, they had the ports. Everybody was getting dirty rich. Everybody was getting dirty rich. And then the thing started getting sticky. I'm gonna have to come back and talk about this stuff because I gotta go cook today, people.
And you see, Black men try to act as though once you got off the plantation, everything was fine. They had intact family dynamics, which to a degree that was true. You did have some homes, but the women at the end of the day, because Black men did nothing to prevent this on the plantation. Now, if Black men wanted to set a
top your eyes on me, yes, lady. They did nothing to prevent. Yo, fam, how are we getting away with this in 2022? Come on, man. You got too many people listening to be this intellectually irresponsible with the transmission of history. This is wrong because young people are watching. And people are going to go out here and repeat this stuff just like they were repeating Willie Lynch letter all over the place. This is wrong because all of the information is at our very fingertips. To say they did nothing is not accurate. To say everybody did something is also not accurate. Okay? And if we want to talk about psychology and not talk about learned helplessness, how if you continue to get this negative result from trying to do that which is right, eventually people give up. But everybody didn't give up, because if they did, then they wouldn't have been anything popping after you got freed. One of the things that many people did after they got freed was went and looked for their family members who they were separated from. They went, the Freedmen Bureau started recording names of people, plantations, lost ones. And one of the things, a decade after the emancipation, people were just wandering from place to place, looking to see if they could find their long lost loved ones. What are we saying? Why are we making people to act as though they're heartless and mindless? Maybe that's where we are in today's space and time, sadly. But that's not what was happening directly after slavery. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I know y'all kind of quiet over there, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section. 127. Let me see how much more I could go on this. I can't go much more on this. I'll just go a little bit more, and maybe I'll have to come back at another time and do the other half, or maybe not. I don't know. Somebody, hey, Cynthia, if you're willing to have a discussion, I'm willing to have a discussion. But, you know, the disrespecting, I don't really do well. I don't do disrespect because I don't think it's beneficial to the whole. But also man, get the people the truth, man.
Put themselves on the plantation and said, no, we're going to be the dominant role in the family. But they didn't. So since they submitted to Black women basically playing the dominant role in the family, which is the dynamic that men of no color on the plantation orchestrated, that is what is setting the tone now, because Black men have failed to do anything about it.
Yeah, had they been hard to deal with, it wouldn't have been that way. It would have never happened that way. But they were not hard. They were very easy to keep in captivity.
Again, what's the bigger picture here? The bigger picture is you cannot have a nation within a nation. You cannot have a sovereign nation within a nation. So if this man was going to rebel, he would have to take the reins of not only his local space, but the governmental body as a whole. You're asking for a lot. Okay? You're asking for a lot. Where in the diaspora, even if you have melanated faces in governmental positions, even look at the Caribbean, you had the ruling powers or the ruling factions. You had who were still calling the shots. So even though you may have a black prime minister, even in Jamaica today, and Barbados and all of these other places, you still have people who are ruling government and factions, who have armies and navies and the ability to subdue other people. So it's like asking the man to give you something that he does not have the capacity to give you, and then saying, if you were better, you would have given it to me. This right here is wild, bruh. I'm gonna have to come back and talk again about the resistance. Stop saying they didn't resist. It's not true. That's like saying the continental African did not resist colonization. That's not true. You can resist and still lose, you know. Just because you lose and became subdued did not mean you didn't resist. Seriously, this is hella sad, says Judah. Now I see why I wasn't inclined to watch. Well, we inclined today because I realize if we don't say something, if we don't say something, and we continue to have people who are saying something continue to speak, then we can't complain. You feel me? Let me run a commercial real quick. Again, like I said, I'm back. I have multiple things that I'm trying to accomplish. Let's get the likes up, subscribes up, so that we can grow the channel, continue the discussion, support the Yummy Cottage and the things I'm doing on the ground, because I'm not just a talker. I like to do. I like actionable things. I like healthy families, healthy relationships. I like healing, all of these things. And I think that these conversations are necessary so that we can facilitate such things. So let me go ahead and play a Yummy Cottage commercial. Again, the Cash App is $ the Yummy Cottage, as well as you can go over to the Yummy Cottage if you want to support. And you can find a lot of the books that I've written. One of the first ones was Angry Black Woman Syndrome Revisited. I got to make a commercial for that. We have that as well as other things on Amazon. So if you are a reader and you like to support in that way, then you could go on over to Amazon, look up Amuna Yisrael. I'll put the links in the bottom and you can do that. Let me go ahead and play this and then we're going to wrap up in a little bit. All right. This is brought to you by the Yummy Cottage. This episode is sponsored by Yummy Curry Powder. Go on over to www.theyummycottage.com for your powder today. All right, so let's listen to a little bit more, although I think I've had enough in this session, because they're just, when you read in a paper, right? I took back some courses. I got some more to go, but all that stuff costs money. I'm not trying to go in debt right now. You feel me? But I started going back and taking some courses to finish up my college. And when you got to research, you got to cite sources. And you can't just cite one source. You understand what I'm saying? Oftentimes you have to cite the source that the source is citing. And so I feel that just reading the Moynihan Report and not actually going into the primary research, you have primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, not to go into primary sources. This is a secondary source. Moynihan is, because he's quoting and reading other books, right, to come to his conclusion, or other publications. So this is a secondary source that cannot just be quoted because it's left up to interpretation. But I'm just going to listen to a little more because I can't take no more right now. I'm going to need a break.
Yeah, they were. And they don't want to, the fact that they don't want to admit to that is the biggest problem. It's like, y'all know y'all did absolutely nothing to push back on anything. And now you want to come in here and blame feminism and blame welfare and blame all of this. And
All right. I can't take no more. Let me go to the book. What's the name of the book again? Let me check. Resistance. Because I have to dig the book up because a lot of my books are in storage. But let me get this book for you real quick. This is the one I have in my possession. I read the whole thing. It's deep for you to look at the ways in which people resisted. Because we will be inclined to say, nobody resisted. It's absolute falsehood. Hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull the book real quick. All right. This is the book right here. Yeah, this is the book. Let me share my screen with you. I can't listen to no more right now because it's just false. It's false, fam. Let me stop sharing that. We'll come back and listen to the rest another time. This is an interesting book to get right here. And maybe next time I'll end on this note, and next time I'll pull the book out and then I'll go over some of this stuff. Let me move this right here so you can see. All right. This is one of the books. There are many, but this is one of them. This one is called The River Flows On: Black Resistance, Culture, and Identity Formation in Early America, Anti-Slavery Abolition and the Atlantic World. This is the book, okay? And I'll read a little bit about the book. The River Flows On offers an impressively broad examination of slave resistance in America. Let me rewind what she said again. He didn't resist. They didn't resist. Spanning the colonial and antebellum eras in both the North and South, and covering all forms of recalcitrance, from major revolts and rebellions to everyday acts of disobedience. Walter C. Rucker analyzes American slave resistance with a keen understanding of its African influences, tracing the emergence of an African American identity and culture. Rucker points to the shared cultural heritage that facilitated collective action among both African and American-born slaves, such as the ubiquitous belief in conjure and spiritual forces, the importance of marital dance and drum, and ideas about the afterlife and transmigration. Remember, we just heard that they didn't resist. So if they didn't resist, this book shouldn't exist. Focusing on the role of African cultural and social political forces, Rucker gives in-depth attention to the 1712 New York City Revolt, 1739 Stonewall Rebellion in South Carolina, the 1741 New York Conspiracy, Gabriel Prosser's 1800 Richmond slaves. Remember, look at the dates. They did nothing to contribute to the freeing of slavery. Look at these dates: 1712, 1739, 1741, 1800. What time is emancipation? Civil War kicks off 61. Okay, Gabriel Prosser's 1800 Richmond slave plot, and Denmark Vesey's 1822 Charleston scheme. He concluded that Nat Turner's 1831 revolt in Southampton, Virginia, which bore the marks of both conjure and Christianity, reflecting a new African American consciousness, which rich evidence drawn from anthropology, archaeology, and religion. The River Flows On is an innovative and convincing study. I have this book. We shall pop it out. Really? Because saying that they did nothing. Let me rewind. Saying they did nothing. They did nothing is untrue, brethren. Come on, we don't have to tell lies to. Come on, man. Wait. Let me play what she said again. And that's just one book. Let me just play what she said again. And you can understand why is Zamuna going so hard? Because don't lie on those who are not here to defend themselves. Come on.
Plantation orchestrated. That is what is setting the tone now, because Black men have failed to do anything about it.
Yeah, had they been hard to deal with, it wouldn't have been that way. It would have never happened that way. But they were not hard. They were very easy to keep in captivity.
Yeah, they were. And they don't want to, the fact that they don't want to admit to that is the biggest problem. It's like, y'all know y'all did absolutely nothing to push back on anything. And now you want to come in here and blame feminism and blame welfare.
That's my objection. You did nothing to absolutely push back on anything. Nyla came in and said that they did nothing, and that it was purely economic why abolition of slavery came about. That's not accurate. It's not accurate. There was much resistance. It was because of the resistance that it was no longer economically expedient. Let's keep that. Let me come to the comment section, because I have to go, and I gonna make some curry. Oh snap, son! Let's not lie on our ancestors to prove our points. It's all right. Okay, India says, do you know her reasoning for doing this report in this way? I played the video from the beginning. Right now we are 22 minutes in. I'm gonna have to, and I'm 1 hour and 40 minutes into my commentary, so I'm gonna have to wind down. So yeah, I started from the beginning of the video. I'm not saying that I agree with how she put this together, but understand why she did it at the time. Yeah, I mean, to what I was able to hear, unless there's another video, I can only do this stuff in measure. But what I'm objecting to is some of the inaccurate retelling of history, really, India, right? Because this is an area that I've studied heavily, right? And as you could tell by when my tone changed, and I'm not even laughing, it's not even a joke, is that I understand that if we do not understand this part about how we got here, what happened, then we're going to be doomed to continue to repeat things, right? So she said in the beginning that going to the root is important, yet skipping over the root and doing what she's doing is not leading to the direction that we need to be going in, right? She was reaching and had no she's reaching, she's overreaching, and she's just flat out revising history. She did the expose, if you will, at the time, because the manosphere decided to use one sentence of the Moynihan to say woman. Yeah, I've gone over the Moynihan Report. I've gone over all of that stuff. I totally understand that stuff. But even in rebutting what the manosphere is saying, to come to certain conclusions, because it's like you're working backwards. If you already have a conclusion, the only things you're going to do is go back and find things that support your predisposition. I don't particularly study like that because it leans towards confirmation bias, right? Where you state, this is what I want to prove. And then you only go look for information to prove that, even if you have to change the things that it's actually saying. So what I found in her rebuttal, nah, I should behave yourself today. Yo, so my point is that even if you're trying to disprove what the manosphere is saying, two wrongs don't make a right. You're going to the degree to revise history and say your ancestors did not fight, they did not rebel. That's not and none of that is true. That can't be further from the truth. That can't be further from the truth. And that's my contention. You can do all what you want to do. That's your business. But to sow this disinformation into the minds of people who already don't even go into this history. And now, not only do they not go into the history, you're giving them revisionist history. Come on, man. That's off. Nasha, behave yourself this morning, yo. I'm going to open the mic for 2 seconds, y'all. I'm going to open the mic for 2 seconds. But definitely, India, let me know your thoughts. Go back to the beginning. I was sharing my thoughts, and I'm giving information that supports why the things that she's saying to make her point is incorrect. Yo, y'all got jokes this morning, yo. Let me open up the mic because I went in for a little bit. I'm gonna open up the mic for 2 seconds, and then now I gotta cook for Shabbat. There's the link right there. Like I said, this book, we can go over it. Just this thought of the man didn't do nothing and he was wholly subdued and this, that, and the third. That's a lie. It's a lie. It's straight. I'm just calling it. It's a lie. There was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of rebellion. Okay. And the laws that you saw, if you follow the way in which Black codes were written and how they increasingly got more violent and more more oppressive, that is because of resistance. Every time someone resisted, every time someone stepped out of line, they went harder and harder and harder with the punishment. It wouldn't have been that if there was no resistance. If you look at the way law is formed and the culture in which they were making this stuff up as they went along. When something happened and someone slips through the cracks, they're like, okay, for instance, and I've been over this on my channel before. One of the reasons why they decided here, I'm talking about on the mainland continent, to change the laws about the status of the child fathering the father is because there was a woman. Her name was, it's funny how I can remember this stuff, but I can't remember the names of people I just met. That's a shame I'm moving. I believe her name was Elizabeth Keys Grimstead. No. Yep, her name was Elizabeth Keys Grimstead. Let me give a little history lesson right quick, like before I boogie while I'm waiting for somebody to share their thoughts. Okay. Her name was Elizabeth Keys Grimstead. I'm going to tell you why the laws began to change. And this is how the culture, because laws, right, then begin to shape culture. Okay. So to say that people weren't resisting and this didn't happen, that didn't happen, how did the woman start to became woman-led as it related to the slaves? I'm going to show you. Let me do the Umar. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. I need to laugh a little bit because right now it's crazy. Do you want to know? I'm going to show you. Hold on, let me go over here and share my screen. It's not funny though. Come on, man, peoples. It's not funny. Okay. All right, boom. Elizabeth Keys Grimstead. Okay. Look at the date on this. Look at the date. Good. This is remember, what time does they start bringing melanated people to the US? Ask yourself that first question, okay? So Elizabeth Keys Grimstead, this is very early on, was one of the first Black people of the 13 colonies to sue for freedom from slavery and win. Key won her freedom and that of her infant son, John Grimstead, on July the 21st, 1656, in the colony of Virginia. Remember, one of the first places they come to is this Virginia, these colonies here. Key based her suit on the fact that her father was an Englishman, don't ask me why I'm reading like this, who had acknowledged her and arranged her baptism as a Christian in the American branch of the Church of England. I wonder, what does this have to do anything? Patience, Daniel-san. He was a wealthy planter who tried to protect her, meaning Elizabeth, by establishing guardianship for her when she was young before his death. Based on these factors, her attorney and common law husband, William Grimstead, argued successfully that she should be freed. The lawsuit was one of the earliest freedom suits by an African descendant person in the English colonies. This is not a man. This was not a man who did this. I'm trying to show you, based on this conversation, how the women became the matriarch of the family. This is what Moynihan is talking about, and this is what the conversation is about. In response to the Keys suit and other challenges, the Virginia House of Burgess passed a law in 1662. Ask yourself how many slaves was in America in 1662. Not a lot. Not compared, because it didn't get popping until later on. Okay. Established, so this is one of the first laws that is going to shape enslavement culture in America. That the social status, listen, a law was passed in 1662 establishing that the social status of children born in the colony, bond or free, would follow the social status of their respective mother. Partus secutor ventrium, or partus relating to chattel property. I skipped down a little bit. Let me go back up. The law differed from English common law. What did I say earlier in this conversation? I'm not blowing smoke. Don't got no time. I don't even smoke. In which children's social status were determined by their fathers. This is what shaped enslavement culture. So the conversation about men not doing anything, and they were not making the laws. These are the laws that would then go on to govern and create the culture by which the relationship between the man and woman was patterned. jump down. The legislation hardened the boundaries of slavery by ensuring that all children born to enslaved women, regardless of paternity, this is when the spotlight is put on the woman versus the man. Why? Because this is about slavery. So those who hold the bag, she been getting the bag, had more value in this enslavement system. Regardless of paternity, of proportion of a European ancestry, would be born into slavery unless explicitly freed. So she ultimately sues and wins. But why is this important? This is important because, again, this is one of the first laws that is going to be affecting the family unit. This is before slavery is popping in the United States. It was already doing what it was doing in Brazil. It was already doing what it was doing in the Caribbean. But by the time when it's coming to the United States, why? Because early on, because they weren't bringing a lot of melanated females, the men were marrying Europeans. But that's another story for another day. That's another story for another day. It's important to understand this history. Why? Because like what was said that I agree with, if we don't, India said, let me get my glasses. Yeah, I agree. Neither the men or the women in these gender wars, I agree, it's sad, have intent for absolute and introspective truth. And my point is, if you don't, then why are we wasting each other's time? It's a waste of time. We too far down in this conversation to be wasting time like this, to be playing these type of games, because there's no winner when you're playing these type of games. There's no winner when you play these type of games. It's straight destruction. I heard somebody say that this what's going on now is akin to how gangster rap affected the culture. Okay? This is the new equivalent of gangster rap in the way that it is putting a wedge between the people that need to come together to do what needs to be done. It's wrong. It's wrong. And then to lie on those who are not here to defend themselves, to make your point, is even more wrong. You can't say you're going to go to the root and proceed not to go to the root. I'm stopped at 22 minutes in. I may come back and do more, but I gotta go do what I have to do today. So I want to say thank everybody for tuning in. Let me know if you got any value from that. If you want to read the Moynihan Report, read it for yourself in its entirety, if that's what interests you, right? If you want to learn about, did they resist? How did this happen? Why did all of these people come from the continent? Who was involved? If you want honest answers, do the research. I can point you in the right direction because, like I said, I was consumed for many years with this research, right? I mean, getting down into the nitty gritties. I went to what the slave master was saying, what the plantocracy was saying, what the enslaved was saying. You have to go to all sides. Some people just want to make up what they feel they were saying. You don't want to go read. On my computer as we speak, I have PDFs upon PDFs upon PDFs of slave narratives. I told you about what was it called again? The Writers Project. I'm going to show it to you one more time. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this subject. I keep saying I'm going to go. The Writers Project. This was during the Great Depression, where the Federal Writers Project was something that was, I've told you guys before, this is something that was capturing the stories. So unless you've gone in and done this where you're capturing the actual stories, if you're listening to anything that somebody is concluding based on what they read, if the person has a slant, guess what you're going to get? A slant. You're going to get a slant. If you look up the Federal Writers Project, you see here WPA, or right here, loc.gov. Let me see if you're seeing this. These are the stories of what was going on, what was the experience. There was this is from the Library of Congress. Let me see if you can see. Oh, you can't see because I still got the thing on. Hold on a second. So I agree with India. I keep doing that. I don't think people really have a true desire to know. Because if we did, then we wouldn't be continue to give ear to things that are feeding into lies, basically. American Life, Historical Histories, Manuscripts from the Federal Writers Project, 1936 to 1940. So they actually sent people out because they would have been the last of the people who were still alive. They were old in their 80s and 90s who were alive during slavery, and they went and captured their stories. It's at the Library of Congress and it's free. 2,900 documents compiled and transcribed by more than 300 writers from 24 states. They were writing down. They captured it says the holdings from the Federal Writers Project spanned the years from 1889 to 1942. They captured pictures, they captured stories, they captured experiences of those who were enslaved during this time. This is if you really want to know, but I already know based on experience, the majority of people don't want to know. We want our fancies to be tickled, right? We want to believe what we want to believe. We don't want to know the truth because we can't handle the truth. Okay. When you click on stuff, you go there and then you click. And when you open it up, you get to see that these people were typing stuff in on typewriters. They tell you the person. You make it bigger. You make the screen bigger. Hold on. Go back. And then you read. You read the experiences. And even when you read the backstory of these experiences, you hear some of them, there were European writers going out, and some of them, there were Black writers going out. And then they noted that some enslaved people, what's going on, Sakara, were, or past who were enslaved, they didn't feel comfortable talking to some Europeans. So even when you hear like, it wasn't that bad, this, that, and the third, you have to also consider who was there and taking the notes, right? And who they felt comfortable disposing or their information to. So that right there is the Writers Project, among other things that we can use as real primary sources for these discussions, if we're really trying to have these discussions. So this wasn't meant to come for nobody, to drag anybody, or any of that extracurricular stuff that we do or we say. This was meant to chime in on some of the information that's being disseminated that's incorrect. It's incorrect. And it's damaging, right? Because are you trying to make a man who's listening to this, is he to believe that his ancestors didn't do anything to try to change anything and they just sat around and let it happen? That's what you're trying to make them believe? That's not true. It may be true for some. It's definitely not true for all, right? So next time I will dig up my book so we can read a little bit about some of these rebellions that led to emancipation. Because there was a lot of things that came together that led to emancipation. But with that said, we're approaching the 2-hour mark. So I'm going to go ahead and wind down now. Once again, thank everybody for tuning in. And set your notifications for when I come back on again. And we'll talk. Leave your comments, suggestions, and thoughts in the box below. And let me know what you find in your research.
I've been watching you, watching me. And I know you want to like, subscribe, and comment.
Now I'm playing, but for real, like, subscribe, and comment. Join the conversation. You don't know.